Welcome to Conversations Live. For more than a decade, we've brought you the best in books, entertainment, celebrity interviews, and current events. When the movers and shakers of the world have something to say to you, they say it to us first. Now celebrating 17 years of broadcasting success, here's your host, Cyrus Webb.
And welcome back, everyone, to Conversations Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again, both for our radio audience here in Mississippi at WYAD 94.1 FM and WYADonline.com. We're glad that you all could rejoin us. Also, just tuning in to our online affiliates around the world, including our friends at iHeartRadio and Amazon Music Podcast. Glad you all could be with us as well. I'm excited to welcome back Bestselling Author David Baldacci to our program. He's celebrating the second book in the now popular Archer series called A Gambling Man. If you guys have not read the Archer series, it definitely is one that will keep you turning the page. We'll talk to David not only about this new chapter in Archer's life, but also what he hopes you're able to take away from the book. David, welcome back to the program.
Oh, it's great to be back. Thank you.
Well, David, you always give us such a great book with these complicated characters. Well, we had a chance to talk when you first introduced Archer with One Good Deed. What has it been like for you to see the way that readers are responding to him?
It's been, everything I hoped it would be and more. It seems like everybody loves Archer, and going back to this time period was, in some ways, a gentler, more simple time, in some ways not. I think, particularly during, the pandemic and all that, when people were just looking for more escapism, they didn't want to read about a book where people were walking down the street in masks and everything was closed.
Right.
It gave people just sort of a fleeting, few moments to take a deep breath and think about a different time period. And so I've loved the reaction, and I've always thought that Archer was kind of an everyman and, a guy trying to do the right thing in a dishonorable world, and readers seem to really have picked up that.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny to hear you say that, David, because what I thought was so fascinating, though, in reading A Gambling Man is that the themes are so 2021 in so many ways. You have characters like Ruby who has, these dreams, as a lot of people do, of going off to Hollywood, and kind of making their place there. And then, of course, Archer's dealing with these complicated things that are very timely, like infidelity and murder. What was that like for you to kind of include these slices to show us that even as times change, a lot of things do stay the same?
They do, and I tell people the reason why that, you can look back at history and tell, first moments of recorded history and go forward to 2021 and things, seem like there's a lot of the same things going on, and there's only one reason for that, and that's because human beings, even though we continue to evolve, human beings largely at their core levels don't change.
Yeah.
So people in the year 1000 were lustful and greedy and jealous, and the year 2000 they're lustful and greedy and jealous, and they want something somebody else doesn't have. And so all those motivations and plot lines and impulses and the reasons people do what they do, are just as valid today as they were 1,000 years ago, just because we are human beings and that's how our brains are wired.
Yeah. Take us back then to the creation of Archer, because you've given us some great series along the years, David. What is so interesting about A Gambling Man, too, is that we're able to see his strength, also his cynicism, I think, in a lot of ways, but also not wanting to put up for the BS when it comes to people making excuses or not, being honest. How did he come to you?
I was on book tour a few years ago in Toronto. It was the middle of a snowstorm, and I had finished my work for the day on publicity and everything, and I went back to my hotel room. I don't really sleep well on the road, and I'm looking out this wall of white outside my hotel room. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to write a short story about this guy named Aloysius Archer. The name just kind of came to me. Crime noir genre, which I love, movies and books. And I'm just going to see where it goes. So I sat down at my desk in the hotel and started writing. And I just thought it would maybe like a 50 or 60-page short story. But at the end of 3 or 4 months, I had a full-length novel, just because I was so into the character, into the time period, and what I wanted to do with him. So really, it just came that I was bored. I was stuck in a snowstorm in Toronto. Otherwise, maybe Aloysius Archer would never have seen the page.
Wow.
But sometimes that's where these, the creative impulses come from. And I love crime noir. I mean, the 30s and 40s were a great period for writing and for movies, very atmospheric. It was a terrible time for many people. If you were a person of color, if you were a woman back then, it was not a great time to be alive. Mm-hmm. It was just so prejudiced, so discriminatory, so racist in so many regards. But at the same time, for me, there were a lot of intriguing plot lines because 1949 was post-World War II. Americans from all corners of the country race, creed, color, ethnicity. They were sick of the Depression. They were sick of being poor. They were sick of fighting a war. They just wanted something new. So a lot of Americans just pulled up their roots and they moved, and a lot of them moved west looking for a better life, and that really intrigued me, and it's a big part of The Gambling Man.
And I think, too, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think, too, as we're kind of seeing the way that Archer kind of deals with the world, we're able to see, too, that even for people like him, you know, things are not always the easiest, especially if you are, as I mentioned earlier, going for the truth. So in this particular book, of course, you know, the title, I think, alludes to a couple of things. One, Archer's personality, but also, two, the world that he's in, that is full of, again, what we see today. You know, there's greed, there's gambling, there's a lot of things. But I want to talk about the search for truth, because that does seem to be the consistent thing for him, even as someone who is, as we saw in One Good Deed, David, you know, has had his issues. What was it like for you to kind of show him on this quest, especially as he was teamed up with another character we get to meet, Willie Dash?
It was important for me to you know, show Archer, you know, warts and all. And, you know, he's still a young guy. He's only 27 in this novel. He's seen a lot of life. He's fought in a war. He's been in prison, so he's seen the dark underbelly of life, and he's seen a lot of death as well. But again, you know, he's more cynical than he was in One Good Deed, just because of what happened to him in that book.
Yeah.
But you're right. I guess if with all the rest of the world sort of going to hell in so many different ways, and people just out for themselves, here's a guy that really does still care about the truth. And I think so long as one human being does out there, that there's hope for the rest of us, and that he wants to see rights, you know, that wrongs righted. And he wants to hold people accountable for what they do, and he doesn't like it when other people hurt other people. As he said, there's a line in the book where he doesn't have a problem with anybody killing somebody so long as they're in a war, and when you're fighting for your own survival. But to go out and kill somebody just to further your own interest and make a buck, that's something you need to be held accountable for. And it's a very rough moral compass, but I think it's also a very true and honest one as well. And it was intriguing for me and challenging for me to sort of shepherd him through the second book, because my job in this one is to give you an interesting plot so you keep turning the pages, but also to keep furthering and evolving his character.
Yeah, and I think that's it. And even when it comes to, you know, him taking a shot at love, or taking a chance just even in general, I think it's great to be able to see him be able to do that. You know, as I mentioned, you know, you have gotten to be beloved, David, over the years for all these great characters. Now that things are kind of relaxing here in Mississippi, things are starting to open back up. Has it been easier for you this time around to be able to connect with your readers?
Yeah, you know, I'm still doing everything, you know, virtually, radio and on the computer through Zooms and other things like that. And I really look forward to the day to get back where I'm actually around, you know, people for real and not on the computer. I think we all are. I'm not alone in that, certainly. Right. But there's this. I love the visceral connection between readers, seeing them, shaking their hands, taking their questions, you know, seeing them face to face, signing their books for real while they're standing next to me. Yeah. Those are important. You know, I spend a lot of time totally isolated by myself working and crafting my novels. So that's an important time for me to get out there to be around other human beings. I think if the pandemic has showed us anything with all of the terrible things, it showed that human beings we're social creatures, and we crave companionship and friendship and camaraderie and being out actually with other people doing things. And that's all been taken away from us in the last year or so, and I think that's what we're all craving, to get that back.
I totally agree with you. In the meantime, though, we definitely encourage our audience to head to either Amazon or your favorite local bookstore and get your copy of A Gambling Man, the newest book by bestselling author David Baldacci. And David, how can our audience stay connected with you?
They can go to the website. It's davidbaldacci.com. That connects to all my social media platforms, Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, and probably a bunch of others. I have no idea what they are or what they do, but I know I'm supposed to be on them. So there you go.
David, thank you so much again for the time. It's always a pleasure, and looking forward to our next conversation together, man.
Thank you.
Hey, and we thank you, our audience, for tuning in to another great segment of Conversations Live. Until next time, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying, as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Live. Now let's go make today amazing. Take care.